Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today lecture is about respiratory system. In this lecture we will discuss physiological anatomy of the respiratory system. Overview of the respiratory system. The respiratory system facilitates the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide between the external environment and the human body. Breathe in and breathe out. The airway, trachea and bronchi, lungs and alveoli, and pulmonary surfactant provide the biochemical and biophysical basis for the exchange. Acid-base balance in the body also rely on this tissue as well as on the carbonic, anhydrase and other enzyme system. The respiratory system is divided into two areas of respiratory zone. The upper respiratory tract, which is also called conducting zone, which conduct the air to the respiratory zone, and the lower respiratory tract, which is called respiratory zone, which is the site of gas exchange between air and blood. The upper respiratory tract is made of the nose, nasal cavity, mouth, sinuses, throat, which is also called pharynx, voice box, which is called larynx, and windpipe, also named as trachea. The lower respiratory tract made of the lungs, large airway bronchi, small airway bronchioles, and air sac alveoli. Let's discuss them one by one. Bronchi. Around the center of the chest, the trachea divides into two cartilage ring tube bronchi. This is the trachea, the windpipe, and at the center of the chest it divided into two parts, bronchi, which contain cartilage. This section of the respiratory system is lined with ciliated cell. The bronchi, the inner surface of the bronchi are covered with cilia. The bronchi enter the lung and spread into a tree-like fashion. Refer to the bronchi and all of their subsequent branches into similar tube called bronchial tree. These bronchi then divided into subbronchi and then further divided and in the last into tree-like structure like the bark of a tree. Bronchioles, bronchial tube divided and then subdivided. This is the bronchial tube. It divide and then there is subdivision of this tube. By doing this, their wall become thinner and have less and less cartilage. The more they branch, the more they become thin and the more they have less quantity of cartilage. Eventually they become a tiny group of tube called bronchioles. Alveoli, bronchiole, and in a tiny air chamber that look like a bunch of grape. Here you can see that look like a bunch of grape. Each chamber contains many cup-shaped cavity known as alveoli. This bunch-like structure is called the alveoli. They are cup-shaped. The wall of the alveoli, which are only about 1 cell thin, are the respiratory surface. They are thin, moist, and are surrounded by several number of capillaries. The exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide between blood and air occur through these walls. The estimation is that lung contain about 300 million alveoli. Their total surface area would be about 70 square meter. If we spread these alveoli, their total area is surface area is about 70 square meter. That is 40 times the surface area of the skin. Here you can see the cross section of the bunch of alveoli and you can see the cup-like structures. They are cup-like structure. They are thin wall and they are surrounded by capillaries, small capillaries. They are covered by the capillaries on one side by the venous type and on the other side by the arterial type, which contain oxygenated blood, and the venous side contain the deoxygenated blood. This area which is called respiratory bronchiole. At this level also gas exchange occur. In the alveoli and in the respiratory bronchiole, gas exchange also occur. In this diagram, on one side is alveoli and on the other side is the capillary. This is the alveolar sac. These are the epithelial lining which are attached to the basement or basal membrane. On alveolar side we have the alveolar sac, the alveolar single layer epithelium and the basement membrane to which these epithelial cells are attached. They are single layer. On the other side is the capillary, in which blood flow, the deoxygenated blood enter the lung through these capillary, and when they leave the oxygenated blood through this capillary. Again, the capillary has a lumen, a single layer of endothelial cell and the basement membrane, and between the alveoli and the capillary is a thin space which is called interstitial space. This is the ultra structure of the alveolar respiratory membrane cross section. At this side we have the capillary. This is the capillary endothelial lining, single layer, the basement membrane, the interstitial space, and the basement membrane of the alveoli, the epithelial lining of the alveoli, and the surfactant, the fluid which is present in the alveoli and gases. So this is the ultra structure of the alveolar respiratory membrane. This is the lumen of the blood vessel, which contain the RBC, the endothelial lining, the basement membrane of the capillary, the interstitial space, the basement membrane of the alveoli, the endothelial lining, and the lumen of the alveoli. Type of cell in the alveolar wall. There are two types of cell in the alveolar wall, type 1 and type 2. Type 2 alveolar cell are thicker than the type 1 cell, and these are type 1. The basement membrane of the capillary endothelial cell fuse with those of the type 1 alveolar cell. The type 1 alveolar cell fuse with the basement membrane of the alveoli, and type 2 type cell secrete the surfactant. The diffusion distance can be as small as 0.3 micromillimeter, which is about 100 times or 100 times less the thickness of the human hair. This space is 100 times less than the thickness of the human hair. Pulmonary capillary dynamic. Alveolar wall are lined with so many capillaries that in most places the capillary almost touch one another. You can see that these alveoli are covered with the capillaries, extensive mesh of capillary, and these capillary actually touch each and other and side by side. Therefore, it is often said that the capillary blood flow in the alveolar walls as a sheet of blood. Here you can see this when you will add a sheet of blood in some area of the lung, because these capillary touch each other and the alveoli are not visible in these area rather than individual capillaries. So we can't see a single capillary, but we see in this area sheet of blood. So this was from nose to the alveoli, or the physiological anatomy of respiratory system. Thank you. See you in the next lecture.